Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. Great to have you all here, and we also have David here. He's the other person in the camera. So today we're going to be discussing the Appspace Intranet, how you can create a personalized hub that informs and engages your employees. Now, I know some of you might already have intranets or you're looking for a new intranet. So yeah, David's going to show you, and we're going to have a look at all the features, and you can see what the Appspace Intranet looks like. So yeah, just before we get started then, a few quick housekeeping rules. If you have any questions today in the webinar, you can always pop them in the question panel. There's a little picture down here showing you where you can put those questions in. We'll also send out the recording, so don't worry, no need to take down notes or anything. We make sure you'll get that recording before the weekend. So yep, that's it for the housekeeping rules. Just quickly looking at the agenda for today then. So we're going to be firstly defining the workplace experience, and then also discussing a little bit about the evolution of the intranet, the digital workplace, and the employee experience. We're going to do an intranet live demo. We have David here. We're going to have a couple of minutes at the end for Q&A and a wrap up. And today's session will be around 30 minutes in total, so it's going to go pretty quick. So I think we can go next slide, David. Thanks. Perfect. And yeah, today's presenters, we have David. So David has implemented over 100 different intranets in his long career. I think you've implemented, David, in many different types of companies, large, small, so you have a vast amount of experience, so really looking forward to hear from you. And then you're very much lucky to have me also in this webinar. You'll see me in the European, in the EMEA, in the event circuit, and doing these Appspace webinars. And I'm here kind of showcasing some of our innovative Appspace solutions. So over to you then, David. Let's get stuck in.
Thank you, Josh. So I can see, obviously, there's a few people still coming into the session, so I'll get started. But if anyone's got any questions or misses anything, then please feel free to put it in the chat, and Josh will interrupt me. So really, first, what is an intranet? This is titled intranet. I sort of disagree slightly with the term intranet in that I think it's slightly antiquated. I think that we've moved beyond that kind of place now. So there are other buzzwords that we've seen in the industry. There's a few more that aren't even here, right? So there's the intranet, the digital workplace, the enterprise social network was part of it for a while. The new social intranet was part of it for a while. The modern intranet experience, the modern workplace experience, there's been a number of different terms bandied around. And today, the current term used by Microsoft is employee experience, and we'll kind of look at what that means. So how did we get to being called an employee experience, or how did we get to where we are today? And as Josh mentioned, I've worked on intranet since 2008, so long time now. And effectively, back in the early intranets that I would work on or that I would see, it would basically be a document repository, right? So you'd go in there as I remember drop-down mega menus. I remember sitting down with a French bank, and they showed me this PHP site with over 55 different nodes to get to the documents they wanted. And my first proper intranet project, the intranet was affectionately known as the place content goes to die. So this was very much where we were in the start of the intranet era. And then I remember also going to a customer in Germany, and they showed me their newsletter, very proud of it, and said, well, we're looking to digitize this newsletter. And that was really the communication element, the idea that we could digitize newsletters, that we could have some sort of carousel on the homepage that would push information to our employees without having to give them the paper version. And then, of course, MySpace, Facebook, these products boomed overnight, and the idea was that everyone wanted this social experience within their intranet. Some companies were reticent, some companies were very excited. There was the birth of products like Yammer and Citrion and IBM Connections and Jive, and all of these products that kind of appeared overnight in this social space. And really, Appspace's intranet, which is powered by Beezy, was one of them. Beezy was one of the kind of products that was born around the collaboration time. And that really speaks volumes around where we are today as a product on the intranet side of things, and as a platform, and how we view the lens of the employee experience and the digital workplace. And then today, really, I think where we're going, and where, particularly Microsoft is talking a lot about what they're doing with Viva and the AI and the different pieces of intelligence that they're baking in, it's not just about having a collaborative experience. It's not just about people to people. It's actually the idea of not only the business to people and people to people, but products to people. The idea that users, it's now less is more. They don't want 5 different apps. They want the content to come to them. And you can even read some of the latest articles from analysts like Gartner, where they talk about what does omnichannel mean? How do we envisage this? And it's not about creating content once and distributing everywhere, although that is a part. It's about the data coming to you as a user in a personalized manner. So those transactions are often integrations with Salesforce or Workday or ServiceNow. So the idea of pulling in these different systems in a meaningful way to each individual user is really where we get the term employee experience, because the employee now feels in control. They now feel like everything is personal and targeted to them. And that is really the pantheon of what we're trying to achieve with the digital workplace today. The digital workplace, or as we've called it in this webinar, just for the ease of understanding, the intranet, is part of an overall modern workplace experience. And really, you have to understand what that means at a very, very high level. So a workplace experience is not just the digital, although that is a very, very large part of it. The digital is a huge part. So digital tends to fall under communications, people and culture, the idea of the newsletter or the intranet in some cases. It also is the physical. So particularly now we're in a world where it's a very hybrid experience. Of course, Appspace, the platform, is a mix of the physical and the digital. And this idea of spaces, and more recently from Microsoft, the idea of places, but the physical experience of going to the office, of booking your desk, of the reservation of that room, or the visitor management when you get to that office, and really how you deal with all of the facets around that. And as I've mentioned, it's about bringing in the systems and the tools that you need to get your job done, whether that is Salesforce or Workday or ServiceNow or whatever products that you use. It's about amalgamating them and making life easy for the end user. And that's something I think we often forget as internal communicators, which is the industry I speak to most, but also in IT. We forget that sometimes we're doing all of this for the end user. So while the tools may be targeted to us as purchasers or content creators or developers in some cases, we have to always look through the lens of the end user and what that means. I will actually be doing a session tomorrow as well, where I'm going to look at more frontline workers and the very unique set of challenges that you deal with for frontline workers. But I want to talk a little bit in this session about how we've arrived at the platform today when it looks at purely at the digital workplace or intranet piece. I will touch on the other pillars that I just mentioned there, but today we're focusing on the intranet side. So one of the things that I think is very important to understand is that the Appspace Intranet is a product. It is part of the overall platform, but it is a product that is installed inside of your ecosystem. It's installed inside of your Office 365. Why? Well, historically, intranets were built, and this for a long, long time, and still today is a common practice. We build intranets. And realistically, now more than ever, it's an even harder decision to make because Microsoft is doing so many wonderful things at a platform level, but because of that wonderful innovation they're giving us, that very fertile ground, it's more difficult than ever to keep up with them. And this slide at the bottom here will show you a little bit about what's happened in the last less than 3 years. Average intranet lifecycle is 3 years. Average intranets before they're refreshed or rebuilt are 3 years. And that's something important to bear in mind because at the bottom here, if you'd have built your intranet 3 years ago, you would have had no clue what Viva was. You might have still used Skype for Business instead of Teams. You would have almost certainly, well, you would have built it in classic sites. Now, you may listen to this and understand what I'm talking about. You may not. You may remember Infopedia. You may not remember Infopedia. You may remember GigJam. You may not remember GigJam. But there are a litany of products that Microsoft has tried and played with over the years that have either been degraded or amalgamated into another product. And at a product level, that's what we have to do. So we have to build our solution on all of these moving parts. And we have to make sure that these moving parts always talk so that our end users, our millions of customers, are happy and using the same product day in, day out. If you've got any questions on how that works and lives in your architecture, then please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to do a more technical deep dive afterwards. So let's dive into the demo and let's view this again, 50,000 feet. What does good look like? I did a conference recently. It's actually one of the best conferences I've done in a long time. It was a conference called the Richmond Communications Conference, I think, based in the UK. And it was kind of like a speed dating. You met a lot of different people and spoke to a lot of different people in our industry. And it was really, really interesting to meet like-minded people who live in our space. But there was one of the things that I found a lot when I talked about past projects that seemed to resonate with a lot of people. And the idea was that inside of our world, a successful intranet, in my experience, and as Josh mentioned, hundreds of intranets later, tends to feel, not necessarily is, but tends to feel like it's 80% user-generated content, 20% internal comms or editorialized content, and 10% integrations, content coming from third-party systems. And that 80-20-10 rule is something I talk a lot about nowadays because I've seen it work. It's not for everybody. We've got some banks that will never reach that, but it's not necessarily about having the 80-20-10 rule stuck to. It's about making it feel like an 80-20-10 rule for your users. So there are three core components of a successful intranet, in my opinion. The first component is the ability to create beautiful editorialized content and make it targeted. So today, for example, in SharePoint, this is possible. You can do some really cool things inside of SharePoint without having to go and buy a product. But if you're an internal communicator, then your life is very difficult to target that content because you have to do it each time per web part or per content type. And at a product level, we try to make our life as easy as possible for the end user. Now, our entire product is managed by the business. You don't necessarily need to be IT to use our product. You're looking at a dashboard right now, which is the authoring experience for internal news. And it looks and feels like anything else you've ever used. It looks like WordPress or Medium or even LinkedIn if you've ever written a news story for LinkedIn. And at the start, I talked about the workplace experience. I talked about omni-channel. And it's important that now, as part of the Appspace family, that we can create content once and be able to push it to those digital signage pieces. I'm going to show you briefly what that looks like, but I will also cover that in a bit more detail in tomorrow's webinar about frontline employees, because it's more important there because you need to be able to get users who don't necessarily have an email or a login access. So firstly, let's go in and let's write a new article. You can see these different channels. Every large organization I've ever spoken to has fear or concerns around the dissemination of responsibility and permissions to create the articles. Now, I'm an admin, so I can create as many articles as I want. You can see here, I can drag and drop and move these articles around. But you can also see that as an admin for, in this case, Europe, I can only create content for the European channels. Now, I am actually an admin that can switch and move around, but that's a different subject. You can have different types of users, so you can disseminate the responsibility. When you're creating editorialized content, there are companies that we deal with 130,000 employees that have only 3 people writing content. So it's important to be able to disseminate that responsibility to people with lesser permissions. In this case, we'll call them writers. You have the ability to also manage the articles from the dashboard, see which channels, who's promoting them, what status they're in, have they been approved, rejected, etc. So the content creation should be frictionless. We should take care of the design so the people writing the content don't have to. They should have a seamless, easy, and beautiful experience every time. So if I, just shut my window over here. If I go and copy some content, you'll see that when I actually copy and paste the text, it'll automatically take our font. Now, our font means your font. So we will embed your font in the product. So the branding layer is only done once, and we embed everything at a branding layer in the product. Why do we do this? We do this because there's nothing worse than CSS or JavaScript breaking because a new release has come out, or the URL has moved slightly, or the mega menu has changed. That can't happen with our product because we make sure that we brand the entire product at a layer, and then you as a customer will get that managed for you with every release. We also lock it down so you can't have Times New Roman size 36 or Wingdings color purple. Why do we do this? Every company has a very clear identity and culture. So by simplifying and removing complexity, we can ensure that it's always going to match your ideals, your brand guidelines, your identity. So here, the ability to add H2 or turn something into a quote. When I'm even embedding content, if I want to go and embed a little, I don't know, Spotify podcast down here, which is one I have earlier, share, copy episode link. This will embed the podcast in the page. This uses a very common technique in consumer world called single page application. The idea that by embedding a video or a podcast or a Google map or something like that in the story, it will automatically look and feel as part of the story, and it won't link you off somewhere else to go and play it. It will allow you to stay on the page, stay engaged, stay in the intranet or in the digital workplace. Of course, I can turn that into a quote as well, should I want to. I can also add things like videos and images, but let's add a video. Let's make this a little bit more engaging, and I choose this video here. Again, this video could live Brightcove, Kaltura, Stream, YouTube. It will automatically embed for me and give me some limited options around size. It really does take care of the design, so you don't have to. And if you want to go in and add a cover image as well, you can resize slightly, or you can play around with it, check what it looks like on every device. Now, in this case, we're going to push this to digital signage, so I probably want to check what it looks like on the big screen. Sometimes I can go in and have time to edit the image preview, drag and drop what it looks like on tablet or on phone, or I might be in a rush and just publish it straight away. If I do decide to edit the image preview, then you'll get an idea of what I can do. I can look at what it looks like on all different size screens, resize it, drag and drop, move it around. But for the purposes of the demo and speed, because I only have 15 more minutes, I want to make sure this is published straight away. So before I publish it, I just want to show you something. Now, of course, I use Appspace. I use our own technology. Now, this is my iPad in my office. It's actually currently next to my screen, and this has got the Appspace app. So if you see here, I choose the Appspace app. You can also see that I've been watching a lot of World Cup. Then you can see here, I've got the Appspace app, and this is a Chichester office, which is where I live. If I decide to publish this now to the Chichester office and I hit publish, it will automatically update that digital sign. Now, of course, there are a lot of nuances here, and again, I will go into this tomorrow, but in a second, you will see automatically this will change, and the story that I have just published with the cover image and the QR code in which to access this story will appear on this digital sign. I'm going to put it over here while I carry on the demo. Yeah, there you go. You'll see it change. So the idea is that it's very easy to create content and publish to the physical and the digital. So that is content creation. In fact, before I move on, let's quickly just show you a few other options. You may, as a company, have multiple languages that you support. You may not. You may only support English. And if that's the case, but maybe you have Spanish-speaking employees, you don't, at a corporate level, need to support Spanish. You could literally just tick Spanish, or you could literally just tick Romanian or Polish or whatever language it is, and the product will auto-translate it for you. It will then save it behind the scenes, and only if the user has their profile in that language will they see this version of the story. So again, it's embedding the same podcast, the same videos, it's recreating it instantly for you, and you also have the ability to request approval should you want a local speaker to check the language for you. It's a really nice way to be able to support people's local language without having to do it at a purely company-wide level. So I'm going to move on, and I'm going to carry on with the demo. I'll just go back to my home page here. Back to the bottom one. So that's really the internal commerce piece. That's the 20%. In fact, that's not even all of the 20%. That's the ability to push news to users in a very targeted way. Now, one thing I mentioned before about targeting content is that when you first become an Appspace customer, your customer success manager will sit down with you and they will say, how do you target your content in the organization? The answer is usually that we use Active Directory, or we use our HRIS system, or we use the user profile service in SharePoint. There is no right or wrong answer. Many different people target content in different ways, but the beauty of the way that we do it is we will create these audiences with you once. Once you've created these audiences, these can come from Active Directory. They are dynamic, so they will update. They'll run a little timer job every night and update themselves. Once you have these audiences, every single thing you do in our product inside of the Appspace Intranet will automatically update. So now when I logged in, because I'm in Chichester, it knows that I am part of this project, or I'm part of this project, or this department. I'm working on this document. I will see this news story, or this part of the carousel. Everything in the product is using these audiences to target once, and it's dynamic. You don't have to do it per content type. You just create those audiences once, and then everything else is targeted. The secondary part of the product, so if the 20% is the stories and also the policies and the procedures, which I'll come on to in a moment, then the other, realistically, the rest of the content is this. It's the idea that it feels user-generated. Now, feeling user-generated and being user-generated is a very different thing. Firstly, giving every employee power giving them the feeling that they are in control is a very, very important facet. So even though I might only be able to share to my department, or I might only be able to share to one project that I'm working on, maybe just the digital events team, because that's where I work, I still feel like I am in control, and therefore the newsfeed feels personal to me. Now, it is personal. I only see cards that are relevant to me. It is an amalgamation of everything in one single place, but I will see everything that's relevant to me here. It's all interactive. I can comment, I can like, I might co-author this document. There's, of course, version control built in behind it. And hey, maybe it knows that in the UK or in this part of the organization, we want to share things on LinkedIn. So when I click share on LinkedIn, it'll automatically create that post for me, and I can endorse this content. It's the idea of employee advocacy, allowing you to spread the word of the good work your organization is doing. Or maybe it's a colleague who works with me, wants an expense claim, and I'm his boss, so I need to approve or reject. The newsfeed is personal to you. It is 80% of content, or it feels like 80% of content that is coming from my colleagues or my systems or anything else that is driven to make my life feel personal. Even the collaboration and the sharing and the posting is ring-fenced to the communities that you have access to the workspaces that you have access to, but it will always feel very, very personal to you as a user. And by giving every employee this power, even if it's restricted, they're more likely to go and use the product. There's a number of things that we consider at a product level. So, for example, when we talk about single page application, we talk about the 80-20-10 rule, or we talk about the newsfeed, there's a lot of thoughts gone into this. First question I tend to always get, particularly in Europe, is why are there 3 columns? Why is there not a single column? Surely everyone else uses a single column. Twitter uses a single column. They do. Twitter do use a single column. But there's an interesting statistic that you can Google and you can find the statistic out. In Twitter, 96% of tweets come from less than 10% of people. This is a statistic that you'll see online, and it's great for Twitter because they have the blue tick. Particularly now under Elon, that's going to become even more relevant. But for your intranet, for your digital workplace, that is not a good thing. The 10% is the people in school when you're at class and they put their hand up first and me. That 10% will always post. You don't need to worry about the 10%. It's the 90% you need to worry about. And the 90% like to go second. So simple tricks like putting the card next to another card makes you feel more confident sharing. Hey, I'm happy to share in the digital events because Jose Luis has already shared, or I'm happy to share because Maximo has already shared this document. And little tricks of the mind like this, although they're not even real, because only the people in those communities that I share with will see it, these little things will help get the feeling of that 80-20-10 rule. The final part of any good intranet is, of course, making sure that the targeted content is always targeted, whether it is the internal news, whether it is the day-to-day work of the communities, or whether it is those policies and those procedures. The navigation, everything in our product, as I've mentioned, is designed for the business. So your changing of the layout, the drop downs, the mega menus, this is all something that your customer success manager goes through with you. It does not require any development. It is literally drag and drop or WYSIWYG. Anyone can build this out. I once did it for a customer in less than 2 days, the entire proof of concept environment, and then they went in and used it. But ultimately, it's a very, very simple tool to use. The pages themselves are designed to be targeted. So I often use this, and if you've watched me demo before, you'll have definitely heard this before. But when we built pages, the ideas of the policies and the procedures, we built a product feature, we went out to market, and we did the whole thing that you're never supposed to do, is pat yourself on the back and say, well done, good job, we did a great job here, we ticked it, we ticked the box. The reality is we missed something. So when we first built this feature, we missed the understanding of how every user interacts with a product like ours. The obvious answer is, well, firstly, it has to be promoted from HR. Well, that makes sense. So in our product, we have the ability to ring fence different parts, whether it's a country, a department, or even a sub company, and target that content based on that area. So there's the first layer, being able to feature content. And that's the sort of person that likes to be told what to look at. Now, if you're that kind of person, then you like this section even more, because as you scroll down, it knows who you are. Remember those audiences that I told you about that you create once? Well, they're kicking in here as well, and they're automatically targeting, in my language, the content that is relevant to my role. So I'm seeing the pages, the policies and procedures relevant to who I am. And if you like Instagram adverts or you like Facebook adverts, then hey, guess what? You love this, and this is where you'll never go past this. This is where you'll find content. Some of you might look at this and think, no, I don't like being told what to view. If that's the case, you're exactly like me. And you'll probably search from Windows 10 or Windows 11 because our product lives inside of your tenant. So that absolutely works. If you start searching, you'll instantly find results. You can see dog food up here. You'll find content that's relevant to you. Or you'll filter. You'll say, actually, I want to find something to do with the company policy that is to do with the corporate strategy that is, there you go, I found it. Now, I've given you a few mantras already. I gave you the 80-20-10 rule. I've given you the 70-20-10 rule. My maths is terrible. I've also given you the idea of single page application and a few different things around how we look at how people interact with the software and the 3 different columns. Another one is 3 clicks or less. We've found, and there's a few different studies on this, but if people can't find content in 3 clicks or less, then they're not going to find it, right? So having them being able to filter very quickly and find the documentation or the policies they're after is key. Now, again, in here, there's some AI built in, there's recommendations. If a page shares some certain number of tags, then great, it'll automatically be visible. But again, we built this solution and thought, that's it, we've nailed it. We didn't realize there is a better way, or there's not a better way, that's an incorrect statement. There's another way that people think. There's a more, in some cases, traditional way. And the idea is that if you want to go to find an HR page, you should go to the HR site. And underneath the HR site, there should be a subsite called onboarding or called compensation or whatever it might be. And then maybe another subsite and another subsite. We have got customers that have many, many, many nodes. Now, again, in my mantra of 3 clicks or less, this doesn't work. If there's more than 5 nodes, you've already lost. I would literally go up here and I would start typing what I'm looking for, and I would find it. So my brain works that way. But the beauty is there's no right or wrong way to find content. In fact, no users ever complain they can't find content, right? They complain when they can't. So by increasing findability, people often get search and findability confused. By increasing findability, you have more likelihood of your users, your everyday users, being able to find content no matter where they are. The last 2 things I want to look at in the remaining minutes, well, maybe one thing. The last few things I want to look at in the remaining minutes is that, of course, as part of the Appspace platform, we're now looking at how we build everything through the lens of Microsoft, but also through our entire system. So now we're starting to play, and this is not available today. So these last 2 pieces, this is very much a proof of concept that we are working on at the moment, but it fits into our vision. The idea that you can go and you can book the physical from the digital. The idea that going in and choosing to book your desk within Barcelona because I'm going to go and visit these guys, or viewing the map and deciding where it is I want to sit, or looking at my reservations I've got coming up and extending them and managing them and getting the QR code and being able to go and visit the building with my day pass. This is all something now that we have available, and something that we're working towards having the one cohesive story. But also with that comes the whole Microsoft integrations, because Microsoft is super fast and aggressive right now. And what I just showed you on the policies and the procedures, the sites, this is very much what Microsoft is trying to do with topics. Now, I can guarantee no one on the call has topics. It's too expensive. But when you do, this is something we're building to work with for the future. So, quick example. If you are interested in Viva and you have no idea what it is, feel free to reach out. I can go through this in quite some detail, but Viva Connections is a way to show your SharePoint intranet inside of Teams. That's all it is. Viva Connections is that. There is another piece of technology called Dashboard, which I don't have time to go through today, but we also work with that. But because now our product is using all of the cool stuff that Microsoft's doing behind the scenes, you don't need to worry about having different apps for Viva Learning and Viva Insights and Viva Connections, because Viva Learning is baked into our Discover cards. Viva Insights is baked into the Hero. Viva Topics is coming in those sites. And when you look at next year's roadmap and you start looking at places and what Microsoft is doing around wayfinding and visitor management, well, Appspace is already there. We've been there for a while, and if you watch the announcement, Appspace is the partner of choice here. So having everything through the lens of one single place is where Microsoft is bringing us all together, and we're using all the cool stuff they're doing to give that solution to our employees today. I have less than a minute left. I want to stop and be respectful if there's any questions. Josh, Anything else to cover?
Okay, it's already half past on the hour, so we're not going to have time for questions, unfortunately, but we will get back to your questions via email, so not a problem. Thanks, David, for that great demo and presentation. It was great to see it there live, to see how it really looks like. Just quickly, we've got the Appspace for Frontline Workers webinar tomorrow. I put the link in the chat if anyone wants to join that, or you can just go to appspace.com/@events. So it'd be great to see you there. And that's all we got for you to. We don't have time for questions, unfortunately.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, and that's all we got time for you folks today. Thanks everyone for joining. I hope you have a great day, and speak to you later, and hope to see you in another Appspace webinar soon. Okay, bye-bye
Thank you
everyone.
all.